Hello, 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 everyone. There is an article I came across, a Vanity Fair article, and I thought that the author did just a brilliant job. And you guys know how I am about these writers. Um, they're just not editing the magazines the way that they used to. So I really appreciated this article. I was thinking, like, what happened to Ivana Trump? Um, We heard that she passed away. It was really sudden. It didn't get nearly as much attention as I would have expected it to. And I didn't hear very many details. So I Googled it. A few articles came up. This one really stuck out. And it was just so well written. It's an exciting read and it's informative as well. And so I wanted to read it to you all and, just give you something else to listen to while you are driving, cleaning, washing dishes, um, relaxing, taking a bath, whatever it is you're doing. All right, so I hope you enjoy. The article is called Inventing Ivana Trump, Her Improbable Rise and Tragic Death, from the magazine Vanity Fair. Now, this article was written by Mark Seal, November 3rd, 2022. Ivana Marie Zelnikova escaped from behind the Iron Curtain to storm New York City and help create the twisted miracle of Donald Trump. From her greed is good heyday to her post divorce denouncement, cavorting with a series of freaky Italian lovers, it was Ivana all along who gilded the Trump name. Act 1, The Staircase. She is alone in her 7-story East 64th Street townhouse atop the steep, spiraling stairs that friends and family have warned could kill her. Tomorrow, July 15th, 2022, she is scheduled to fly to Saint Tropez, her first flight since the isolation of COVID. No one knows when she takes her final step, but some will find comfort when her body is reportedly found in pajamas with a coffee cup instead of a champagne flute nearby. They hope she fell in the early morning hours instead of the darkness of night. It's been 9 months since she buried her fourth husband, the handsome Italian playboy Rossano Rubicandi. Rossano might have been financially needy and more than 2 decades her junior, but he made her feel young again. Now, 73, or so they say, Ivana has more memories behind her than ahead, but her Louis Vuitton suitcases are filled with her famous shoes, and she is ready to dance on the French Riviera once again. Those shoes, Christian Louboutins, and her Manolos and Jimmy Choos, became part of her legend when she was the first wife of Donald J. Trump, whom she, in her Czech inflected English, famously called the Donald. By the time he became president, they had both remarried a couple times. But in 2017, Ivana told ABC News, I'm basically first Trump wife. I'm first lady, okay? Her stoic, smiling facade reflected her pride, but hiding her terror. Her true feelings would come pouring out in the New York atelier of her longtime fashion designer, Mark Bauer, to whom she had come to for a fitting on January 11th, 2017, 9 days before Trump's inauguration. Always with Ivana, it was fun fittings and champagne parties, says Bauer. But this time he noticed something as soon as she stepped off the elevator. The Manolo Balonics looked slightly scuffed, the toes dented a bit, and not nearly as immaculate as they always had been. Ivana ordered a half dozen tight fitting, body hugging, jewel tone dresses. Then they retired to a couch. The designer had his business partner, Paul Margolin, sitting on the side of Ivana. So, how's everything going? They asked. Do you need a dress for the inauguration? She said, I don't know if I'm going to go, remembers Bauer. Then she started sobbing, uncontrollably, tears pouring down her face. We both cradled her in our arms, saying everything's going to be okay. Her words came out in torment. They hit me. They all hit me. Bauer remembers Ivana wailing. Everywhere I go, they say things, they shout things to me. Outside my house in Central Bay, Palm Beach, everywhere, they hate me. Through her sobs, she added, It's not my fault. I am not him. I divorced him a long time ago. I do not deserve this. The designer was taken aback. I had to fight back tears myself, he says, because here was the woman I greatly respected and loved, totally broken down. But wait, Ivana wouldn't want you to see her like this. Gone from a size 8 to a 14, according to Bauer, and as her longtime nanny turned assistant would say at her funeral, adrift in a sinking swamp of parasites with illicit dreams and schemes, especially not in the pages of Vanity Fair, which she so lavishly chronicled her heyday that a blow up of her May 1992 cover would stand near the casket at her funeral. No, Ivana would want to turn back the clock and let the spotlight shine on her in her 1980s prime. High heels, shoulders padded, blonde hair, big, her smile flashing at 100 watts. A superstar straight out of the era's defining prime time soaps, Dallas and Dynasty. To get there, she had made an unfathomable journey across geographic and social divides, escaping communist Czechoslovakia before flying into Canada on the wings of a marriage of convenience and her credentials as a competitive skier. When she was 27, in 1976, she finally made it to New York as a runway model. It was there, rocking a blood red mini dress in the company of 7 other models, that she met her prince. I love a good looking man, she said on the Oprah Winfrey Show, then added, but it's really with the look and the brain and the energy and the really potentials. And Donald always had a great head on his shoulders. I saw the potential there. She speaks a little lousy, but she's gorgeous, and I'm going to marry her, Trump would later be quoted as saying. Their wedding, technically her second, took place on April 7th, 1977, at Maribel Collegiate in Manhattan. So began the fertile period when Ivana helped her husband design, construct, decorate, and run his landmarks. I will pay her $1 a year and all the dresses she can buy, Trump famously said, a comment that supposedly devastated his wife, who was rising fast in the ranks of the Trump organization. She took the dresses and the shoes, and buildings rose in her wake. The Grand Hyatt, 1979, Trump Tower, 1983, Trump Plaza in Atlantic City, 1984, and the Trump Taj Mahal in Atlantic City, 1990. Ivana restored the couple's new home. Marjorie Merriweather posts gargantuan 118-room Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, as well as Trump Princess, the 282-foot yacht Trump purchased from the Sultan of Brunei for $30 million dollars in 1987. Under her influence, the Donald traded his Burgundy Queen suites for Brioni, and he and Ivana ascended from developers to stars. In a decade of glitz, they were the glitziest. In a decade of greed, they were the greediest, reported People. 13 years and three children later, the fairy tale fractured, spawning the decade's biggest tabloid divorce scandal. Then Ivana staged an explosive comeback, fueled by the realization that her first name was as powerful as her last. She was indomitable, says her friend. Her mother is still alive at 96. She would have never thought she would fall down those stairs. Ivana's story is in many ways even bigger, grander, and more extraordinary than her ex-husband's. It's a saga worthy of a Broadway musical or an opera. But before the fall on those closed stairs, but before the fall on those cursed stairs, she would be found by her housekeeper at 12:40 p.m. Her story begins with a climb. Act 2, the climb. How does a barbed wire girl from a shoe factory town between the Iron Curtain escape to America? Define the greed is good 1980s and help create the twisted miracle of Donald Trump. An only child born 8 weeks premature on February 20th, 1949, she is bestowed with a Russian first name. Maybe they thought it would help me with the Soviets. By her parents, an electrical engineer and a telephone operator. The family lives in a concrete house on the grounds of the Bata Shoe Factory complex in the town of Gadwaldov, where everyone toes the party line. But Ivana Marie Zelnikova, she meets the competitive skier George S- Sarovatka at 14 and starts dating him at 17. When the communists relaxed restrictions during the Prague Spring of the 1960s, they began traveling together. She has acquired the taste of the Western world, freedom, fashion, money. Sarovatka will remember. She models, she acts, she wins roles in Czech movies and comparisons to Brigitte Bardot. And she changed her hair brown, and she changed her brown hair to blonde to look more like her, says Sarovatka. Then in 1968, the Prague Spring ends, and Ivana is grounded once more. To defect would mean never seeing her parents again and possibly putting them in danger. Sarovatka finds a solution when he meets a young Australian guy named Alfred Winklemeyer, and in 1971 persuades him to marry Ivana on paper so she can come and go between Czechoslovakia and other countries. Surprisingly, he agreed, says Sarovatka. Saravaka moves to London for work, but arranges for Ivana to live in his family's large, beautiful apartment in Prague, where she earns her master's degree in physical education at Charles University. Here, she finds true love for the first time, not with Saravaka, but with Czechoslovakia's premier young poet and songwriter, Jiri Stidel, 30. He writes her love songs. She becomes his muse, a heavy boozer and a reckless bon vivant, who a friend will say drove like he was grabbing death by the ass. Steidl is speeding in his sports car on the night of October 9th, 1973, with several shots in him and an unknown beauty in the passenger seat, reports a Czech newspaper. When a truck slams into the car, Sato is propelled out of the vehicle and hits the guardrail, dying on the spot. The unknown beauty is thrown into the back seat, but by some miracle, she walks away without a scratch. According to Saravaka, the newspaper identifies her only by her initials, IZ. Ivana Zelnikova. It probably was Ivana in the car, but she denied it. And I never pressed her further, says Saravaka, who invites her to share his home and new life in Montreal. At 24, she drives her Fiat to the Prague airport and, with her pet poodle, Chappie, flies off into the new world. She stays for a time with an aunt and uncle in Toronto. They take her on a Caribbean cruise where, for a shipside costume party, she dresses as a Playboy bunny. And I won first prize. Seeking friends, she accepts an onboard date with a sailor. Who shows her that Western men can be worse than the communists back home. He invited me to his cabin and tried to rape me, she will write in her 2017 memoir, Raising Trump. In Montreal, Ivana begins to rise as a model, walking runways and posing in fashion magazines. I wish 10 more like her would walk through the door right now, the modeling agency director marvels, noting her perfect height and size and her good head for fashion, attributes that will soon entice a rising Queens born real estate developer. It is summer 1976. Donald Trump has just turned 30, but in his mind, he's already a mogul. After a long day of looking at properties, he and Gerald Goldsmith, the chairman of a private club in Manhattan, are unwinding at Maxwell's Plum, a vast restaurant and bar at the 64th Street and First Avenue, known for its selection of sex and food. Trump's eagle eyes focus on a blonde woman in a red mini dress surrounded by 7 other models. Having just arrived in New York from Montreal, Ivana Zelnikova Winkelmeyer, age 27, is in town for a fashion show to promote the 1976 Olympics. Gee, I like that girl, says Trump, and he immediately is upon her, his uninvited hand on her arm. She spins around, ready to give whoever has the gall to touch her the commie death stare. Now she sees him for the first time, the man the New York Times will describe 2 months from now as tall, lean, blonde, with dazzling white teeth like Robert Redford, with a self proclaimed net worth of more than $200 million. All of which means absolutely nothing to Ivana. I wasn't a blushing virgin, she'll later explain, adding that she'd been hit on by countless men since the age of 14. I knew every seduction trick in the book. She had to cross a world to get to Manhattan. Trump only had to cross a bridge. To her, he's just a nice guy, gallantly offering to get her and her fellow models a table, where he joins them for dinner and pays their $400 tab. With that, Trump begins his relentless courtship, a Trump number, he calls it, all enveloping. Trump, whose whole life had been all about him, is suddenly all about Ivana, gushing to his friends and family. Have you ever seen anybody more beautiful? You know, she speaks French, Russian, and Czech. Do you know she is the greatest skier in the world? Donald says I am his twin as a woman, Ivana will later say in an ABC documentary. The columnist Linda Stassi will add, he's such a narcissist. It was like being married to himself. After months of dating, she gives in to his onslaught of marriage proposals. But before they can wed on April 7th, 1977, she must survive a negotiation with Trump's notorious attorney, Roy Cohn, over the prenuptial agreement. I did not speak very well English, and it did not exist in the communist Czechoslovakia, she will later say. It includes a give back clause requiring Ivana to return any and all gifts, including jewelry, that she receives over the course of the marriage. No, the fucking way, she will say, demanding a rainy day fund to compensate her for the $50,000 a year she is making as a model. Trump reportedly deposits $100,000 into Ivana's independent bank account and promises $20,000 for the first year of wedlock and an escalating amount for each year up to $90,000 after 30 years. Then, before a congregation of 200, Mr. and Mrs. Donald Trump begin their epic ascent. She becomes pregnant on their honeymoon with Don Jr. Ivanka and Eric follow in rapid succession. I would give the birth and I would be at my office 2 days later, she tells Live with Regis and Kathy Lee. She becomes a devoted mom whose family is her number one priority. Quick to spot an unutilized asset, Trump dispatches his twin into the trenches of New York City real estate development. I'm going to work for the Donald, Ivana tells her pal Nikki Haskell over lunch early in the marriage. I'm going to work on a construction site. What? Haskell exclaims, knowing Ivana is referring to the old Commodore Hotel, the dump Trump is redeveloping as the Hyatt Grand in a dangerous rundown neighborhood near Grand Central Station. Ivana laughs. They don't know who they're dealing with. She moves a mountain of marble into the soaring, soon to be pink lobby of Trump Tower, renovates the ancient, crumbling Mar a Lago estate in Palm Beach, and becomes CEO of the Trump Castle Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. Finally, in March 1988, after Trump buys the iconic Plaza Hotel in the heart of Manhattan, he installs Ivana as his president. If Ivana hadn't been involved in his business, there would have been no business, Haskell says on the ABC News Studios documentary, The Ivana Trump Story, The First Wife. As the buildings grow, along with the dresses, a wardrobe the time estimates cost Trump's $1.5 million a year, Ivana becomes a pivotal force in building the phenomenon of Donald J. Trump. He didn't know a king and a queen and a princess if it fell over him, the gossip columnist Cindy Adams said on the Ivana Trump story. She opened up all of that to him. He would have never been on The Apprentice without the image that she created, and he would have never been president without The Apprentice, said the author Paula Frolier. Ivana not only loved Trump, she was tethered to Trump so tightly that he would tell Oprah Winfrey in a joint interview, we get along very well because ultimately Ivana does exactly what I tell her to do. Until she didn't. Some said she began to aspire to do things he despised: society, charity boards, fashion shows, grand balls, and grand people. The phonies, Trump called them. He didn't want a co pilot, one long term Trump advisor would later say. He wanted a cheerleader. Soon the cameras shone more on her and less on him, and he was not going to have it, said Adams. The divorce sweeps the world. A tawdry romance novel sprung to life. It opens with Trump and his mistress, Marla Maples, creasing the sheets. The divorce sweeps the world. A tawdry romance novel sprung to life. It opens with Trump and his mistress, Marla Maples, creasing the sheets in Trump owned hotels. Everyone seems to know except Ivana. I was always stand by the man, she says. Now she is standing in a 3 bedroom suite in the Little Nell Hotel in Aspen. It is the Christmas holiday of 1989, and Ivana, at 40, has been reborn via a makeover by the renowned cosmetic surgeon Steve Hoeflin. She's had a facelift and a bosom inflation, and heaven only knows what else, wrote Liz Smith, who didn't recognize the new Ivana until she spoke. Inside the suite, she picks up a landline and hears her husband on the extension speaking to a local real estate agent about someone whose name she hadn't heard before. Who is Mula? She demands. Well, that's a girl who's been going after me for the last 2 years, Trump replies. Somehow, Trump has juggled Ivana and the 26-year-old Maples at holiday parties, keeping them separate and seemingly satisfied. But his luck runs out at Bonnie's, the rustic lunch spot at the top of the Aspen Mountain. He's sitting with Marla and some friends when Ivanka walks in, trailed by Don Jr., Ivanka, and Eric. Marla, in a black ski suit, approaches Ivana in red and pink and delivers a line that, as an aspiring actor, she has surely rehearsed. I'm Marla, and I love your husband. Do you? In an instant, Ivana replies, Get lost, I love my husband. Then, as she has done all her life, Ivana charges, not at Mula, at the Don. We were halfway through lunch and she's coming towards us screaming, You no good son of a bitch, says someone who was at Trump's table. Trump intercepts her halfway across the crowded room and she is just flailing on him. As for comment, Marla Maples did not respond. They exit and the lunch crowd rises as one to watch from their desk. He clicks into his skis, and you could tell that she's looking at him like, Really? You're just going to skid away from me? He tries, but she is fast on his tail. Back at the little nail, Ivana hurls her husband's clothes and Rolex watch out the window of their suite and into the snow. Next comes the unthinkable, at least for Trump. Everyone seems to side with her. If the new tabloid media is born with the Trump divorce, it grows through the all access rise of the new Ivana. She's exactly like Donald in that way. Someone tells the writer Bob Costello for his 1992 Vanity Fair story. They live for the publicity. It's like a drug for them. A lady getting a divorce, a lady doesn't get photographed for getting a divorce. Ivana did. The cover of Vogue. Trailed by paparazzi and Trump's killer lawyers in the midst of their bloody divorce, she rushes breathlessly into the studio photographer Patrick Demarche Schleyer, who is waiting alongside famed hairstylist Mary Hobson, makeup artist Vincent Longo, and creative director Andre Leon Talley, all gathered to style and shoot Ivana for the May 1990 cover of Vogue. Hobson knows Ivana's hair, everyone does. It's been emblazoned on the cover of every tabloid for weeks. Blonde and worn down in a teased flip, favored by the East Side ladies of the day. As Ivana sits before the mirror, Hobson grabs a handful of her lustrous blonde hair and holds it aloft, letting some of the blonde tendrils fall down around her face. We all looked in the mirror and agreed, well, that's it. In that moment, Ivana Trump's famous new hairstyle. In that moment, Ivana Trump's famous new hairstyle is born. Soon, it will be imitated worldwide. You don't have to put down a second name, she commands a writer for the New York Times. Ivana is what the people will call me. They say, Hi, Ivana. The name becomes emblematic for women around the world who love her because she won. She and her legal team goes to war with the 25 million stipulated in Khan's prenup, fighting Trump's fire with fire. In a deposition, she states that Trump, infuriated over a scalp reduction, raped her in 1989. Trump repeatedly denies the allegations. Later, when the deposition is referenced in the book Lost Tycoon by Harry Hurt, Later, when the deposition is referenced in the book Lost Tycoon by Harry Hurt III, the publisher will insert a statement by Ivana at the beginning saying it wasn't rape in a literal or criminal sense. When she walks away with both her millions and sole custody of her three kids, the crowds cheer. Best of all, her rise is concurrent with Trump's early 1990s financial decline and the bust up of his marriage to Maples after 6 years. Ivana launches two companies. Ivana Inc. sells my books, advice columns, commercials, appearances, and lectures, and House of Ivana handles her fragrances, clothes, and jewelry. The TV studio lights beat down upon her now famous hairstyle as she butchers the king's English and sells the king's ransom in down market clothes and costume jewelry to the Home Shopping Network viewers in the US, UK, and Canada. Absolutely fantastic, she seems to say, of each and every item from the 49.95 hoop earrings to the $280 Ivana women's tuxedo that smashes HSN records. If you went down the street with her, I guarantee you that women of all sizes will stop and say, "Look how good I look. I'm wearing your jacket," says her friend Vivian Sirota. Ivana is now a mogul in her own right, spending money as fast as she makes it. She buys her own 7-story townhouse on East 64th Street in 1992. There's also a 12,000 square foot hacienda in Palm Beach, which she names Cancha Marina, Spanish for seashell, and a 98-foot starter room, four stater room yacht which she christens the My Ivana, probably with a bottle of Cristal, the bubbly she promotes as its U.S. spokesperson. One summer day in the late 1990s, Ivana is sunbathing on the bow of the My Ivana off St. Jean Cap Ferrat when a helicopter crashes into the bay. "Let's go rescue whoever's in there," Ivana's captain, Alberto Bettini, remembers her telling him. They jump into a tender race to the scene where they pull two bobbing pilots into their little rescue boat. Upon regaining their senses, the men look at the swimsuit clad rescuer and shriek, "Ivana Trump!" In October 1990, Ivana's beloved father, Milos, dies of a heart attack. The Donald flies with her to Czechoslovakia for the funeral and tries to win her back, according to Vivian Sertota. On the grave of Milos, he said to her, "I still love you. I don't want a divorce. Let's get back together again." As for Maples, whom Ivana refers to only as the showgirl, he says, "We'll take care of it." And if she wasn't so brokenhearted, maybe they would have stayed married, Sertora says. Instead, she rents a house in London's Eaton Square and escapes there for weekends from the stress of her divorce. Ivana is un Ivana is ubiquitous from Buckingham Palace to St. Moritz, where 4 months after her father's death, she falls into the arms of Kenneth Lieberman. He is almost perfect, rich, handsome, successful, and in his late 60s, wise and consoling, but married. Their very public relationship makes international headlines. Then Lieberman returns to his wife, and Ivana moves onto the first of her freaky Italians, as she will call them. At the horse races at Ascot, she meets Riccardo Masuccelli, a London based international businessman. He was not a parasite, said Saratoga. He had his own life, his own business. He knew a lot of the people she knew. Before their wedding at Le Cercle in New York, Ivana's attorney asked Masuccelli to estimate his net worth for the prenup, and he said 5 million or less, remembers the attorney. And I thought I'm betting on less. A zero is how Trump rated Masuccelli. He becomes involved in Ivana's business. Ivana was on home shopping. She took cabs, stayed in motel rooms, never said boo, says Sorto, says Sorota. She marries Ricardo and he starts making demands. He became a prima donna. He felt he was sort of morphing into Mr. Ricardo Trump, says Haskell. He was very upset that nobody referred to Ivana as Mrs. Masuccelli. So we went to Las Vegas and she had all the rooms reserved under Mr. and Mrs. Masuccelli, and everybody was supposed to make sure they called her Mrs. Masuccelli. We went to see Wayne Newton, and he came out on stage and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, my dear friend, Ivana Trump is here." Ricardo got up and left, and we never saw him again. That was the end of the marriage, says Haskell. With Mazzucchelli gone, Ivana returns to Massimo Gargia, an Italian publisher known as the king of the jet set. Start looking, she tells Gargia, who began to search for a man worthy of this beautiful and talented woman. He finds him in Rome. Count Rofredo Gaetani del Aquilia de Orengona di Lorenzana Lovatelli, the eldest of four sons and two daughters, one of the oldest and most regal families in Italy. Rofredo grew up in a vast Roman palace, and his family tree includes two popes. Moreover, he is startlingly handsome, a former professional boxer who shares Ivana's love for adventure and speed. Still in his 40s, with the drive of the Ferraris on display at his two New York area dealerships, Rofredo would bound up Ivana's spiral staircase and into the second floor living room where she will be waiting beside the grand piano. She said he would grab me and he would make love to me on top of the piano, says Sorota, the best sex she ever had in her life. She would tell everybody that he was the best lover and he was such a gentleman and he was very protective. Even Trump gives his blessing, despite being unable to remember Wilfredo's name. Well, Wilfredo is a terrific guy, he tells the New York Times during their courtship. I hope they both have a good time spending the money I gave to Ivana. Then, on December 23rd, 2005, Wilfredo goes to visit his mother in the family home, a castle in Tuscany. Driving through the frost in a rental car, he falls asleep at the wheel and runs off the road. The car rolls over several times, and Wilfredo, who suffers multiple head injuries, is dead at 52. By then, though, their romance is over, mostly due to a third person in the relationship. Wilfredo's boss and mentor, Gianni Angeli, the principal shareholder of Fiat, which owns Ferrari. Gianni Angeli was very jealous, said Sorota, and his constant demands on Wilfredo's time became too much for Ivana. They had a very big fight. I'm sure if Wilfredo was alive, that other creep would have never come into her life. Act 3, The Fall. In August 1999, Francine Eternat, 71, who claims to be a Swiss countess, tells police in Porto Cervo, Sardinia, that she has been held prisoner in the bedroom of her villa by her 27-year-old boyfriend, a bodybuilder and aspiring actor from Rome. He wants to attend a party with important people, according to an Italian newspaper. She prefers another intimate evening. She claims he locked her in her room, returning at 4 a.m. drunk from the disco. He kicked in the door, beat me up, taking with him three checkbooks and the tooth phones. Both parties go to the police. He insists he took only the lodging she offered. Sex? Are we crazy? She could be my grandmother. Eternat eventually withdraws her complaint. Oh, Rosando, he's a wonderful person, she tells the newspaper. And don't call him a gigolo. His name is Rossano Rubicondi. A few years later, Massimo Gargia and a group of friends walk into an hours walk into an after-hours bar in Rome known for its famous clientele. There, among the night, sits Rubicandi. Rubicandi was a nobody, Gargia will recall. Very good looking, amusing. He tried to go all the places in fashion to know people, but without one penny. The supremely well connected Gargia helps Rubicandi get a job as a salesman at the Versace boutique in London. And when Rubicandi learns that Gargia is close friends with Ivana Trump, he becomes fixated on her. He was very pushy, Gargia says. At the ready to wear collection in Milan, Gargia is sitting with Ivana when Rubicandi appears. But Ivana isn't impressed. He's a little bit too vulgar, she tells Gargia. Rubicandi engineers a second meeting. He sold his car in London to go see her in Palm Beach, says Gargia, with similar results. Fast forward to the French Riviera. Gargia has joined Ivana for a 2 week cruise on her yacht. And Ivana, usually so effervescent, is uncharacteristically down. She was alone for more than 1 year, he says, and Ivana was not a woman who could be without a man. That's when Rubicandi turns up again. Finally, one night she was drunk and she brought him on the boat, says Kajia. And the day after, she told me, I'm so happy. He's so nice. For 2 weeks, they cruised the Med. The 57-year-old soon to be grandmother, the kids call me Glamma or Ivanama, and the 30 something Playboy, each able to party until 3 or 4 a.m., then hit the gym at 8, start all over again. From Dancing with the Stars to the beach in Central Pay, she is in love again. Ivana again. I'd rather be a babysitter than a nursemaid, she will write. Friends who hear about the scandal with Francine Eternat try to warn her, but Ivana is blinded by Rubicandi's charms. In the beginning, he was very charming, says Sorota. He bowed and kissed her hand, all the BS. He was very good company, beside the sex, says Gargia. He was very good at sex, like all Italians. Rubicandi learns to speak English, his deep, booming baritone, filling the drawing rooms and dance floors of the Upper East Side, Saint Tropez, Aspen, and Gstaad, always with the lady paying. Senora was a mega financial support for him, says Paolo Alvian, owner of Ivana's regular neighborhood restaurant, Restaurante Altesi. He always wanted something, says Baroness Marianne von Brandstetter. He was like a lion in a cage, says his friend Roberto Menfe. He couldn't be who he wanted to be, a businessman. He would have 15 or 20 coffees in the morning before tennis, says Brandstetter. 10 to 12 Aperol spritzes. No problem, says Alvian. More dangerous than the espresso or the alcohol were the dreams. The scheme of the week, Haskell says of Rubicandi's endless quest to launch himself into the world of business. One day, he's going to open a pizza restaurant in Palm Beach. The next, he has a restaurant in Saint Tropez, the short lived De Rosano. People would come at 11 o'clock to watch him and Ivana fight. Through it all, he is in the Ivana business, which might have been the toughest enterprise of all. He is very difficult to take advantage. It's very difficult to take advantage of Ivana, says Haskell. She sees through everything and everybody. He threatens her. If you don't marry me, I leave you, says Gargia. Everybody was against. Me too. Ivana still believes in the impossible. She honestly believed that if she married Rossano, he might start behaving himself and he would feel more secure, says her longtime friend, advisor, and agent from London, Liz Brewer. But that was unfortunately not the case. The wedding date is set April 12, 2008. It will be a multi-million-dollar blowout, more than 400 guests, a 24-piece orchestra, 25 bridesmaids, 17 groomsmen, and 12-foot tall imported wedding cake, all paid for by Ivana. decorations, flowers, and arrangements like I've never seen, says Brandstetter, all under the eaves of Mar-a-Lago with Trump reportedly waiving the $20,000 event fee. On March 17th, 2 weeks before the vows, the police raced to Ivana's Palm Beach home on Jungle Road responding to the report of a disturbance. They were screaming, says Gargia. Rosano wants money before the marriage. He wanted a piece of the money she was getting for the wedding, says Haskell, who served as Ivana's maid of honor and says Ivana earned about $2.5 million from the wedding related sponsorships. He was just part of the show. He wasn't going to sign the wedding certificate unless she gave him money, so she reluctantly gave him $75,000. Then, before the sovereigns of Trump world, Rubicandi becomes a member of the family. Everyone wears white except Donald, who arrives in a black tuxedo. We are a construction company and we have job sites who lose people, Don Jr. says in his toast. You better treat her right because I have a 45 and a shovel. Hmm. At the wedding, Rubicandi enters to a theme song from the movie Rocky. He sings terrible, says Haskell, and dances until the party ends at 4 a.m. Then he disappears. Ivana's groom, who fed his bride day old Ivana's groom, who fed his bride day old sandwiches at a 7-Eleven in the wee hours after their wedding, has gone first to Miami and then to Rome for a stint on a reality show, Li Isola dei Famosi. She was hurt and didn't want to let it out that she wasn't honeymooning with Rosano, says Liz Brewer. So for 3 weeks, everyone assumed she was even. She was, even though she was home in Palm Beach. When he returns, and he always returns, the gallantry and even the sex evaporate and the fighting escalates. Rosano did not understand that Ivana was the chance of his life, says Gargan. He thought he could get rid of her and have a career. He starts to treat her very bad. They are staying on a boat near Saint Tropez. Rubicandi has left for the evening, returning like always at 4 a.m., says Brandstetter. The ship soon set sail. Ivana checked Rosano's bag and she found a condom. She said, "Why do you have a condom? With me, you are not doing anything." She called the captain and said, "Stop the cruise." She wanted to leave Rosano in the middle of the ocean. The marriage lasts 1 year, but for the next 13 years, Rubicandi boomerangs back and forth despite marrying another woman in 2011. Mm. Without Rubicandi, Ivana begins to unravel. In 2009, she is escorted from a plane set to fly from West Palm Beach to New York after unleashing an F bomb heavy tirade over children playing in the first class aisle. At some point, she reportedly enters rehab in Malibu, where she hosts a dinner for her fellow inmates and drinks forbidden champagne, according to the writer Ivana Lowell in Airmail. Then the pandemic. She rarely ventures out of her East 64th Street townhouse. Instead, Rubicandi comes thundering back in. He wasn't a gigolo, says the model Kimani Chinloy, who accepted Rubicandi's marriage proposal on Italian TV in 2014. He and Ivana had this intense on and off relationship, but they still loved each other. If she called in the middle of the night, he was there for her. Needing money, he calls Ivana from Italy in 2020 to tell her that he is sick. She flies him back to New York, and the final scenes of her saga begin. Paolo, tell this freaky Italian what I want, she tells Avian in Ristorante Altessi, which becomes the couple's second living room. And I knew it was for Rosano to stop smoking, he says. She would say, "Stop smoking and you can have anything you want." He will never stop. Not the daily pack of Marlboro Reds, not the multiple Aperol spritzes by day and the endless Shanti and Fernet Branca, which he drank like water by night. When he says he had been diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma and only has 4 months to live, Alvian thinks it's a lie, another scheme to get money from La Senora. Ivana pays for the medical treatment at Memorial Sloan Kettering. His Upper East Side apartment, which she rents and furnishes, costs her $200,000, says Brandstetter, and she spends her time and energy trying to get him into remission. She had wanted to be a babysitter, but ended up a nurse. New York Magazine will report. On October 29th, 2021, Ruba Kandi dies, taking part of her with him. I think the day after that, Senora started to go down, says Alvian. She would sit in the back of his restaurant over a single glass of Pinot Grigio, and she would say, "Do you mind to play it?" And I know she means Andrea Bocelli, Ave Maria. But Bocelli's rendition of the Franz Schubert's 1825 funeral favorite only invokes a frenzied spirit of Rubicandi. Don't go to that place, Alvian warns her. Don't be depressing yourself to die for him. I put on Celine Dion. He last see her He last sees her early on the evening before her death, walking towards his restaurant, her feeble steps impaired by a hip injury supported by her housekeeper, Fabiana. Send me the carrot soup, she says. The next morning, he gets off a call from his staff. Something happened at La Senora's house. A lot of people, a police van. Her housekeeper isn't able to open the fortress like steel front door, which is locked from the inside. Finally, a workman opens it by force. I was told that Eric, who was very close to his mother, rushed over and held her in his arms until the police got there, says Haskell. Eric Trump declined to comment. But Ivana wouldn't want to reflect on all this death, darkness, and despair. Not in the last moment of her life, because on July 14th, she isn't thinking about death. She is surely thinking about her impending flight to Saint Tropez. The mayor has made a special exception for Ivana to land in a helicopter on the beach near her home, according to a friend, saving her the drive from the Nice airport and enabling her to have dinner with Garcia immediately. She said, "I don't want to be alone," says Garcia. Will she wear the red dress or the gold one? Both are picked. Will she wear the red dress or the gold one? Both are packed in her luggage. She wanted to start to live again, says Garcia. She might have even been ready to take another lover, once again commanding him to start looking. But between dusk and dawn, she takes that final step, tumbling down the stairs, dying of what the coroner will call blunt impact injuries. In the days after Ivana's death, I stood outside her townhouse and watched a young man pull out his iPhone and begin taking photographs, as if this house were one of the newest tourist attractions in New York City. "This is the home of Ivana Trump," he told me in a distinctively Eastern European accent. Like Ivana, he mangled his English, but his admiration was clear. The casket was gold. She was wearing the gold dress, says Haskell. Her hair was frozen forever in her famous hairstyle, and she looked like she was going to jump right up and out at any minute. Trump, who declined to comment to Vanity Fair, reportedly stood beside his ex-wife's open coffin during the viewing in the Frank E. Campbell Chapel on Madison Avenue, pacing back and forth as if he were talking to her, says Vivian Sirota. Later that day, at the gravesite, Sirota waited until Trump was alone, then approached him and said, "You broke her heart. She loved you. She still loved you. And I know you loved her. You could have been the couple of the century. You made a mistake." He didn't say anything, she says, but when he turned around, there were tears running down his face. The end. And that was written by Mark Seal, special correspondent. Mark Seal joined Vanity Fair as a contributing editor in 2003. His Vanity Fair stories have included Scandal, Bernie Madoff, Tiger Woods, Charlie Sheen, Rupert Murdoch's divorce, the mysteries of iconic author Harper Lee, the murder of the Oscar Pistorius case, and the killing of Monaco's richest woman, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope you enjoyed that reading. Um, Hope I didn't mess up these people's names. Too bad, but I only speak English, so I did the best that I could. And I'll be leaving the link to the full article below. Thank you for listening. Comment your thoughts below. Thank you.